What were the Pentagon Papers, and what does this have to do with Unitarian Universalism? It's all about that second source. So find out more in this episode of 3 Minutes in UU History. First, let's start with what the Pentagon Papers were, and then we'll get to the UU connection. The Pentagon Papers, as they were colloquially known, were a top secret Department of Defense document titled Report of the Office of the Secretary of Defense Vietnam Task Force. What did this report cover? Only the entire history of US involvement in Vietnam between 1945 and 1967. Why was this relevant in 1971? Because the Pentagon Papers let the American public know that the war in Vietnam had been expanded without the knowledge of the American public. In the anti-war climate of 1971, with the draft still in effect, large-scale protests occurring, and knowledge of the various atrocities that occurred in Vietnam, America was at a tipping point. What had been an unpopular war was suddenly even more unpopular. Well, small parts of the Pentagon Papers were released via the New York Times and the Washington Post in June of 1971, but were halted very quickly by a court injunction brought by the government. And this was after being photocopied in 1969 by Daniel Ellsberg, working at the time as an analyst at the Rand Corporation. The full text was not widely available because today's preferred distribution method, the internet, was still 10 or 20 years away. So Senator Mike Gravel of Alaska entered 4,100 pages of the papers into the congressional record. But again, no easy way to distribute. The day after this, the Supreme Court sided with the New York Times and publishing of the excerpts continued. Senator Gravel, wanting to get the papers published to a wider audience, started approaching publishers about printing and distributing the 4,100 pages. All the major publishers refused, and Senator Gravel, a Unitarian Universalist, approached the UUA and Beacon Press. In August 1971, Beacon Press announced their intention to publish the Pentagon Papers. And on October 22, 1971, Beacon Press published 20,000 copies of the papers as a 4-volume set. Well, this was a boon to publicity for Beacon Press and the UUA. It came at a high legal and financial cost, both because of the expense of printing the books and the legal battles that ensued as the FBI began investigating the Beacon Press, and Govind Stair, its director, and the UUA. While all investigations and charges against folks involved in the revealing and publishing of the papers were eventually dropped, it took several years for all of this to be resolved. In combination with the fact that Beacon Press never made money from the publishing of the Pentagon Papers, this act of moral courage cost the publisher and the UUA dearly. But it is acts of courage like this that make the actions of Unitarians and Universalists notable throughout the history of the two denominations, both pre- and post-merger. And as Beacon Press has continued to take risks to the present day to publish important works into the wider world, we can look to our history as inspiration to bring justice to the world. And that is today's 3 Minutes in UU History.